Welcome to the Sentio webinar, Deliberate Practice for Multicultural Therapy, with myself and special guest expert, Jordan Harris. This is presented by Sentio Counseling Center, which is an online counseling center in California. We provide low-fee sliding scale online therapy for California residents, individuals, adolescents, and couples. And clients can complete intake forms at the website on the screen, sentiocc.org. I am very happy to present our guest expert for today, Jordan Harris. Jordan Harris received his Doctor of Philosophy in Marriage and Family Therapy from the University of Louisiana. He is a licensed professional counselor and a licensed marriage and family therapist in the state of Arkansas. His subject expertise includes hypnosis, assessment, diagnosis, and therapeutic expertise. In his clinical work, he enjoys working with couples. Dr. Harris is the lead author of The Deliberate Practice in Multicultural Therapy, which is the book that today's webinar is based off of. And he hosts webinars and trainings in deliberate practice and multicultural therapy. Welcome, Dr. Harris.
Thanks for having me, Tony.
Today's webinar is based on the book, which is from our series of deliberate practice books published by the American Psychological Association, where we use deliberate practice to enhance the effectiveness of training in the major models of therapy. This is one of the books, Multicultural Therapy, that was most requested for the series. So we're really excited to release this book. And I am just going to do a very brief introduction to deliberate practice so we can dive into multicultural therapy. Deliberate practice is a method of improving the efficiency of skill acquisition across a broad range of fields. The primary difference between deliberate practice and traditional methods of therapist training is that it's procedural learning rather than conceptual learning. And so in our field, in mental health, we've typically been really good at conceptual learning. I know in graduate school, I got really good at writing papers about therapy. I got really good at debating, which model of therapy was the best. I got really good at talking about therapy. However, if you watch videos of me actually working with my clients, you would have seen something completely different. And that's because my procedural learning was not improving at the same rate that my conceptual learning was improving. This was particularly true when I was working with clients that I personally found challenging, and not to say anything bad about the client, the client's just being themselves, they're doing what they're supposed to do in therapy, but for whatever reason I got activated, or I had countertransference, or whatever it was in me as a therapist was having trouble helping this person. And then I found that all this conceptual book knowledge that I had built up over the years just went out the window, and I was unable to implement it. And so that's what brought me to deliberate practice, and I think that's what brings a lot of people to deliberate practice, is how can we improve our procedural learning so it kind of catches up to conceptual learning. And so what I would like to transition into now is this particular book project, which is Deliberate Practice for Multicultural Therapy. What you're looking at here is the table of contents for this book. Alexandria, if you have questions at any point, please just raise your hand and we can dialogue about this. I want to privilege your questions.
Thanks, that's very kind. I'll let you go. I was eager to buy the book. Not out yet in Canada, so
soon.
I'm just curious.
Soon. It should be out in 2 to 3 months. Soon. In development. So or at the press, actually. COVID slowed it down. Jordan, I just wanted to ask you a few questions about developing this book. First of all, so we have a list of 12 exercises here, or 12 skills for multicultural therapy. Can you please describe the process you and the team went through in determining which skills to include in the book?
Yeah, I think there's sort of two aspects of that. First was like, which skills do we want in the book? And basically, we looked at our caseloads and we looked at the issues that we saw trainees have. And we said, like, these are like the most basic things that people sort of need help with. And so I think in that way, it's sort of built out of, I think, what some people call it ecologically sound, right? Because it's built out of like lived experience. It's not just built out of the research. Because we could have built the book just around sort of, the multicultural orientation theory.
Yeah.
Right? And that's not what this is. I mean, it's definitely heavily influenced by that. I love that theory. I think it's easily, in my opinion, one of the better theories of working with issues of multiculturalism. But it's not, the book isn't solely based on that. It's really based, the skills are really honed, from this idea of like, what have we seen that we struggle with and that our trainees struggle with. So that's sort of like the first part.
Yeah.
And then, we did a lot of, we made a bunch of exercises, sent them out to a bunch of supervisors, tested them, watched tape, and see which ones actually worked and which ones didn't work, and then redefined them from there. So that's sort of what we did.
Can you give an example of one aspect of kind of multicultural theory that maybe wouldn't make it into the book as a skill? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I think the obvious thing for me is like what's it called? Cultural concealment. So this is my personal conceptualization of the model, but there's sort of like three pillars: multicultural orientation, right?
Yeah.
Cultural humility, cultural opportunities, and cultural comfort.
Yeah.
Right. But there's also this idea of cultural concealment, right? That clients will often not engage in the therapy, or they won't say certain things in therapy because they don't feel safe with the therapist, basically.
Yeah.
We don't really have a skill for that, right? I mean, we totally should. And I think that if we wrote another book, then we would do that. But that's not a part of the skills that we've outlined in the book. Because you just can't have everything in a book. It just, you just can't do it.
Yeah, I know one of our goals is to have a book that can be kind of used in a semester length course. Yeah. And 12 exercises is kind of the max for that. And so is it accurate to say that students, when they're learning about multicultural therapy, should read a book about the theories of multicultural therapy, kind of separate from this deliberate practice book? Like this book does not replace the need for a theories book?
No. I mean, I think if in anything, we have intro paragraphs, and those paragraphs I think are very succinct and to the point.
Yeah.
And I honestly think that you can get a lot out of doing the exercises. And I think the research sort of supports that you can get a lot out of doing the exercises. But I mean, I would definitely tell someone to go and read some of, Jesse Owen's sort of like original articles on multicultural orientation. Like like definitely do that,
Right.
So.
Right. Yeah, that's something we found is that, the conceptual learning, the theory, reading the theory is still important. And kind of almost, separate from the skills.
Yeah.
So now you've picked 3 of these skills that we're going to dive into today, just so we can, really demonstrate them. But first of all, if someone's going to teach this in a course, or like Alexandra was saying, going to, use this in professional development for people in the workplace, Jordan, would you recommend just kind of working your way through these exercises sequentially, or would you pick and choose, or what?
That's a great question. I actually think it'd be fine I think ideally what you would do is you would use these as sort of starting places, right? To explore some of these ideas. So we have several about cultural humility.
Yeah.
So if you were able to like say, give like a 1-hour lecture on like cultural humility, then you were able to have people practice, those skills. I think it would really help you to sort of answer the question that you were and to fix the problem that you mentioned earlier, right? Of I had this conceptual knowledge, but I don't have the procedural knowledge. And so I think that would be probably like a really good way
trying to
but I think there's also, there's also different ways. And I know that for myself and for other authors, like if you sent many of us an email, we would help you. We would help you to structure the curriculum. And it would depend on what you were, what your constraints were. Right? So like Alexandria, like you have different constraints than someone would like in a semester course. But you're still trying to train people on how to use this framework to work with clients of different cultural backgrounds.
So it is okay to pick and choose different exercises from the book here and there. They don't have to go through sequentially.
No.
Now, what one of the exercises, the first one at least, the therapist's self-awareness. How important is that?
If you go back to sort of like the core ideas of multicultural orientation, right? One of those is cultural comfort. And I think this also touches on cultural humility, but like you have to know your lens and your background and how that influences how you see and think about the client. It's like a huge thing, yeah.
Okay.
It's really important. I think it is a different sort of exercise. But yeah, it's super important.
Super important. Yeah. So another question I have for you is, having, tried that exercise and done similar exercises, it's pretty vulnerable to do. And honestly, the exercises in this book felt more vulnerable for me than the exercises in any of the other books we've done, like CBT or psychodynamic or EFT or, you name it. Because this, for me, is a sensitive topic. You know what I mean? Like I get emotionally activated and I'm like, oh crap, like I don't want to get it wrong. You know what I mean? Like that kind of stuff. Do you have any recommendations for kind of helping students, and by students I mean anyone doing the exercises, whether they're in graduate school or 30 years experience, how to manage the feeling of vulnerability while doing the exercises?
For sure. I think first off, like anybody who sort of wades into this, like we have to applaud them, because I think that you're right. I think it is on the surface for, if not all of us, like most of us, many of us. I actually think, because there's a power hierarchy, that a lot of the impetus, is that the right word, on protecting students lies with the teacher, the supervisor, the trainer, whoever that is.
Right.
So I think they have to be very mindful of that. And I think the first thing they have to be mindful of is, like, what's the context? If this is a semester-long course, that is, you probably have a different relationship than if it's a 1 hour training. Right. So like in this training, we're not going to go into like all of your own personal.
Right.
That's like the first thing I would say.
Right.
Second thing I would say is, we have built these exercises to protect students as much as possible. So what I would say is, for the most part, stick to the script. Like we have built these exercises. There's there's two ways that we assess at the end, and half of that is just making sure that the person feels comfortable, that they feel safe, and that their boundaries are sort of protected. So I would say, stick to the script. And then I think, the other stuff I think is sort of very nuanced.
Yeah.
And it's hard to sort of give a sort of answer, for in like a 1 hour webinar.
And so when you say the person feels comfortable or safe, you mean the student who's
the student, yes.
And so you used a few words there I want to highlight, which is boundaries, safety. What would it look like if the supervisor, professor, trainer was not respecting the boundaries or safety of the student?
Yeah. So, in the deliberate practice model of training, one of the things that we privilege is like the doing of the exercise. And there's a few different reasons for that. But one of those reasons is because we believe that the best way to actually teach the skill is through the doing. And I think this is sort of a problem. I know you felt this, I felt this in my own training, that sometimes trainers and teachers think that their job is to be the student's therapist in a way.
Right.
And that can get very hairy, very, very fast. So at least in this way of training, it's like not our role. We don't see supervision as isomorphic or parallel process, whatever word your model uses, to the therapy process.
Got it.
So we want to train you in the procedural skills. And so, like I said, we have a specific way that's in the end of every chapter of how you sort of assess people, and you check in with their boundaries, and you don't really do more than that. If they're feeling escalated, you do one of two things: you either keep them at the same level of intensity, right, or you go to like a lower level of intensity. And if those things don't work, well, you can end the session, right? You don't have to keep pushing people to do things, but you're not digging into their trauma, to their family history, to that sort of stuff.
Okay, so you're drawing a clear line between therapist training and therapy.
Right.
One, you're not digging into their personal history, their personal whatever it is.
Yeah.
You're more keeping focus on their performance. Right. Their ability to deliver services.
100%.
And from what you're saying, I get a picture of a trainer or supervisor who's kind of watching continuously about how activated the trainee is.
For sure.
And kind of assessing it continuously. And, this brings up the term, the zone of proximal development, which is something we talk a lot about in deliberate practice, which is a zone where a lot of people are familiar with from like athletic training, for example, where you want to be at the right heart rate. Like when I get on, one of those, cardio machines, it's got the bars that show green, orange, red, and I want to stay in the orange, right?
Right.
Because if it's green, it's not really helping, and if it's red, I'm going to get hurt, right? And so it's almost like we can have a parallel of that in mental health training. Like, what's the orange zone? For our level of kind of activation while doing these exercises.
100%. Yeah, I think a lot of therapists, at least the ones that I run in the circles, they might use the word window of tolerance. I think that's more of like a therapy term.
Yeah.
I think the athletic training, the deliberate practice version of that is zone of proximal development, whatever your like leading edge is. But I mean, if you look at like the Yerkes, I think it's called the Yerkes-Dobson sort of curve of like stress, like not too stressed that you're overwhelmed, not so low that it's not stimulating. You want to be right in the Goldilocks zone.
In the Goldilocks. Yeah, now I can tell you, having done deliberate practice with a bunch of trainees, that this could be tricky because everyone has their own personal variation on this. And especially when you've got a topic like multicultural therapy, people can have triggers on any number of different things that are really effectively random. Like, we can't predict them, right? And and that includes not just trainees, but of course, therapists who've been licensed for 30 years. And so there is kind of added, what I'm hearing from you is what, resonates from the other books, is that there's a kind of an added responsibility on the trainer to be attentive to the student's level of activation. And be customizing the exercises or kind of guiding the exercises in that regard. Is that correct?
Yes. I think there's actually more nuanced than it sounds as well, because in deliberate practice, so I'll give you an example. When I was first doing deliberate practice and sort of going to my supervised practice supervision, I had a trainee I was working with, and I had the sense that she was getting activated. And so honestly, I kept pulling some of my feedback. I wasn't giving her as I wasn't being as strict with the skill criteria as I would have been with someone else. And later she sort of dropped out, right? And I think part of the problem was that by me not holding her to a high standard, she felt like I was saying, I was sort of saying like, you're not doing well and I don't trust you to do well. I would have been better served, honestly, keeping her at a lower level, making the exercise much more manageable, just sticking at that and giving her better and better feedback.
That's really fascinating. This is something we found. So we run a supervisor training. We're a supervisor residency where we train supervisors in how to use deliberate practice. And they videotape themselves doing deliberate practice supervision with their supervisees. So we've watched, hundreds of hours of videos of deliberate practice supervision. And something we found, which was surprising for us, is that when the supervisor is giving critical feedback, critical meaning like, oh, you did this a little wrong, or you did, they're being nice, not critical like judgmental, but
it's corrective. That's how I think about
corrective.
it. It's corrective feedback. Yeah.
Corrective feedback. The trainee's anxiety goes down.
Yeah.
When the supervisor just gives positive feedback, well, you're doing great, keep going, it's wonderful, the trainee's anxiety goes up. This was so counterintuitive. And we found that it's actually really hard for our supervisors to give corrective feedback because, we want to be nice. So we're just like, you're doing great, keep going, you're awesome. And so we run our supervisors through a deliberate practice exercise where they're only allowed to give corrective feedback for a half hour, only corrective, nothing positive. And it's just to like break the habit of only being positive.
Sure. Yeah. I think this is super relevant. We recently recorded the video for this book for the APA.
Yeah.
And so it was me and Alex. He was Alex Vosh. He's a co-author on this book. And we are working with 2 trainees. And I'm gonna be honest with you, like I didn't know this because I've watched so many of these videos from other experts, right? But like actually going through it, it's really difficult. It's really difficult. There's things that you don't see that's going on in the background that make it very difficult. And Alex was so relentless in pushing, I think, me and also the trainees to do well. Like it really taught me. And for me, it was inspiring of, yes, this is hard, but we're still gonna dare, we're still gonna move forward with this, and we're still gonna really push to give you the best possible experience. And I'm not saying that's how everyone's going to respond, but there are trainees who will be like, wow, like I'm so honored that you actually like went after it instead of hedging.
Right. So this is one of the most kind of surprising lessons when we teach supervisors is the corrective feedback is the gold.
Yeah.
That's what everyone wants. Now, of course, it's got to be done in a relationship that feels safe and feels supportive and feels respectful.
Right.
But that's the gold is the corrective feedback. So,
and I think that's why, just to sort of like speak to this, that's, I think, our hope behind the skill criteria. So we have this assessment we do at the end of the exercises, but we also have been very mindful of what the skill criteria are.
Yeah.
Because we want to make it very clear for what this trainee is supposed to do and make it very clear for what the supervisor is helping them to do.
Right.
So another way of protecting boundaries is sticking very closely to the skill criteria.
Right. So like that's how to be corrective.
Right.
Is the skill criteria.
Right, exactly.
Okay. Well, let's jump in and so we can really show what we're talking about here. Hold on one second. Okay. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to switch the screen sharing to a different screen. So I asked you to pick a few exercises for today's webinar. This is the first one. Can you see that okay, or should I increase the font?
Alexandria, what do you think?
If you can make it a bit bigger, it'd be better.
Let's see.
That's fantastic.
What about here? Okay. So this is exercise number 4, inquiring about identity. And Jordan, could you just please briefly describe what this skill is about?
Yeah, so when clients come into these sessions, they bring a whole host of different cultural identities, right? And we call this intersectionality. Who they are, their race, their gender, their sexual orientation, their religion, their immigrants, all those things sort of come into the room. And that's a big part of what it means to be a person. And so this skill is basically us welcoming those parts of the person into the room. And one way to do that is just to very simply, one, empathically affirm the client's statement. And then 2, explore like how their cultural background or their intersectionality relates to their client's statement.
Great.
So those are sort of like the skill criteria for this exercise.
Great. So what I am going to do is here, can you still see this, or is this too small? That's okay. So this is client statement 1, and let's see. Alexandre, could we volunteer you? If you could read the client statement as the client, I am going to be the trainee, and then Jordan, you can give me feedback, and I am going to deliberately screw it up the first few times, and then and as we go through it, I'll try to get it right, and we'll see if I can get it right or not. But you're gonna get to model what it's like giving corrective feedback. Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay, so Alexandre, take it. Go for it.
I don't really want to transfer to this rich private high school. I won't know anybody there, and all the kids drive nice cars. What if there's nobody there like me?
Client, it sounds like you're worried about going to a high school because you want your parents to buy you a better car. I mean, do you really think it's appropriate to have a better car at your age? Sorry, I couldn't resist.
Okay, look, Tony, let's simplify this, okay? Let's start off with really focusing on skill criteria 1, empathically affirm the client statement. We'll layer in the second skill criteria later. So why don't you run it again, Alexandria, if you could cue us up. I want you just to really try to affirm the client statement, okay, here, Tony?
Okay, so just skill criteria 1.
Just skill criteria.
Okay.
I don't really want to transfer to this rich private high school. I won't know anybody there, and all the kids drive nice cars. What if there's nobody like me?
So it sounds like you're worried about going to a new school and whether kids are going to like you at the new school.
Okay. Look, Tony, you have gotten a lot closer to sort of like the affirming the client statement here. I think you actually sort of hit this, but I want to push you a little further. Okay. Like if you could really sort of empathize and affirm like what's the core pain here? Okay.
So maybe right, because I didn't really address the rich private high school and the nice cars. I see.
Yeah.
Okay, let me try again.
I don't really want to transfer to this rich private high school. I won't know anybody there, and all the kids drive nice cars. What if there's nobody like me?
So it sounds like you're worried that you might not fit in at this school because it's has a lot of wealthy students, and you might not fit in and be accepted by the other students.
There you go. Okay. So look, I'm gonna keep pushing you here, right? You're really nailing it verbally, and I know sometimes it helps just to also sort of layer that into your like voice. Okay. Like could you maybe say that like a little softer? Okay. because this is like a weighty thing for this person. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
So, Alexandre, can you read it for us again?
I don't really want to transfer to this rich private high school. I won't know anybody there, and all the kids drive nice cars. What if there's nobody like me?
Sorry to hear about this. I mean, your concerns make sense. It's a big change, and going to a school with a very different culture, with a lot of students are wealthy. I understand you're concerned about fitting in.
There you go. There you go. Look, so that's beautiful, right? Why don't we sort of layer in skill criteria 2 here? I want you to say the exact same thing, the exact same way, and then also go for skill criteria 2 here of asking a question about how this might relate to this client's intersectionality, their cultural identity, their sort of background, okay?
Okay.
Alexandre, can you read it for us again?
I don't really want to transfer to this rich private high school. I won't know anybody there, and all the kids drive nice cars. What if there's nobody like me?
Look, I'm sorry to hear about this. It makes sense that you're concerned about transferring to this school where a lot of the kids are wealthy and it come from a different background, whether you're going to fit in. I wonder if you'd like to kind of explore together how the culture could be different, what this kind of means to you to go to school and live day to day with students, with peers who are rich and driving nice cars and everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, I think that's a great way to do it. There's multiple ways to do it. I think you definitely hit on one, right? I wonder if you want to explore what this means to you to not be a part of this sort of culture. Sometimes when we use a lot of words, trainees or people can get a little confused. So I'm going to ask you to be a little bit more concise on that last part, okay?
Okay.
Okay.
On the last part.
On the last part, yeah.
The second skill criteria. Okay.
Yeah, let me actually be more clear.
Okay.
I'm going to ask you to be more direct.
More direct. Okay.
Be more direct in asking. You can explore the client's intersectionality.
Okay. Okay. Okay, with those words.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
I don't really want to transfer to this rich private high school. I won't know anybody there, and all the kids drive nice cars. What if there's nobody there like me?
Look, this sounds stressful to, transfer to this fancy high school where you're worried you might not fit in because of the wealth gap. And you'll be, with all these kids that are wealthy. And can we explore that in terms of the intersectionality of your identity and what this will mean to you?
Well done. Well done. Look, you got both skill criteria. Yeah, look at that. You just workshopped it and you got it. Well done, man.
Great. So let's pause there. So how many rounds was that? 5 or 6 or so?
Like it's a lot. I don't know, but yeah.
So here's the thing is that is all time well spent. Like one of our concerns with this book series is that people would feel like they have to get through all the, client prompts or whatever. And that is not the case at all. Like every round there, I was learning, I was growing, I was feeling more comfortable, I was feeling more confident. And so, and I think, Jordan, you did a really good job of kind of demonstrating how detailed the corrective feedback can be. And because each round I was kind of learning something new.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. I think, yeah.
Please.
I mean, I just think it's also interesting to me. I always also learn new things. And so it's always interesting to me to learn how other people meet these skill criteria, because the way that I do things is not the same. And so I think that's sort of like the beautiful thing of, I don't feel like it puts anyone sort of in this like robot box.
Yeah.
You watch 20 students do it. They can all meet skill criteria and do it in 20 different ways.
Yeah.
That's sort of like the beautiful part to me. So
yeah. So I want to do another one.
Yeah.
We have an option. So Alexandria, would you be teaching, like using the book to teach the course?
I think I'd be using the structure of
Okay.
the book to teach the course, because what we need to teach in the prison programs is somewhat different from the actual material that's
I
in the
see.
book. But I bought a whole bunch of them now. Buy
Use the
some more, and
structure.
it's the structure. They're
Yeah.
basically copy pasted off
Yeah.
of one another, except
Yeah.
for the content. Structure is the
Yeah.
same. So this is what we would use. So
Yeah.
coming up with a bunch of skills that we need
Yeah.
to teach, rank ordering them
Yeah.
in difficulty levels, and then
Yeah.
finding what we'd call offender prompts,
Right.
and work like you just did. But
Great.
this is what we do. Like what you just demonstrated is exactly what I think we'll do.
Great. Okay. Excellent. Excellent. So would it be helpful if we demonstrate again?
Of course.
Yeah. Let's do another.
What my job will be is to teach people to do what Jordan just did. I'm going to need to teach trainers to use this new model and
great.
give corrective feedback. So yeah.
Okay, great. Well, let's do another one then. And I'm going to share my screen again. So let's stick with the same exercise. And we're just going to use client statement number 2. Can you see that at the bottom of the screen?
Yep.
Okay, great. So Alexandra, if you could please be the client again and read the prompt.
Mm-hmm. I want to be able to stand up to my parents more, but it would just come across as disrespectful.
So I hear that you want to stand up to be more maybe assertive with your parents, but it's also giving you some anxiety as well. Is that right?
Okay. So Tony, let's go back to skill criteria 1 here.
Okay.
And I want you to really double down on trying to empathically affirm client state.
Okay. So I just want to pause here and narrate just for a moment. So I want to highlight what Jordan is doing here is this corrective feedback is anchored in the skill criteria.
100%.
Right? Jordan could have said 100 things, but what he said was, let's look at skill criteria 1 and anchor there. Now, we have found that this is the most effective way to help trainees because it gives them a clear path to victory. Right? What Jordan is not doing is starting to talk about the research around empathy, starting to talk about the research of multiculturalism, starting to talk around, oh, I had this experience with this, client 10 years ago. None of that. He's saying, this is your path to victory. This is the goal. Go for it again. Right? So I just wanted to highlight that. Let's try it again. Yeah.
I want to be able to stand up to my parents more, but it would just come across as disrespectful.
So client, it sounds like you want to stand up to your parents, but you're also worried about how they might receive it. They might feel like you're being disrespectful somehow.
Yes. Okay. So look, you did a great job. I think you're really reaching for this. I think that's actually a big improvement. That is more of a reflection, and this is an empathic affirmation. Okay. And so if you can convey the sense of this makes sense, right? That it resonates with you, and that's a step beyond a reflection. So let's try this again.
Okay, great.
I want to be able to stand up to my parents more, but it would just come across as disrespectful.
Well, that sounds really hard because it's understandable at your age you would want to stand up to your parents, but also it makes sense that you want to be respectful of them and you want them to know that. And so it kind of leaves you kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place here.
Beautiful. Well done. You really nailed that one. Took it a step beyond a reflection. Let's do it again. And you can say it the exact same way, but let's make sure we layer in skill criteria 2 of exploring our cultural identity.
Right. Okay.
I want to be able to stand up to my parents more, but it would just come across as disrespectful.
Well, I hear, client, you're in a tough place here where it makes sense that you'd want to stand up to them. But at the same time, you want to be respectful and you want them to feel that you're being respectful. So you're kind of in a tough bind there. I wonder how this relates to your sense of cultural identity, your intersectionality in terms of just how you see yourself and how you see them.
Well done. I think you got it, right? You sort of went for it. And you did it in this sort of tentative way. I wonder how this relates to your sense of culture and intersectionality. Like, you really made that really clear. Well done. Okay.
Great. If it's okay, let's try a different exercise.
Yeah.
So we get some variation here. Okay, so here we go. This is exercise number 6, maintaining a not knowing stance, or cultural humility 2. Jordan, can you just please briefly describe what this skill is about?
Yeah. So I think, like when I was a new therapist, I wanted to be like Sherlock Holmes, like figure everything out, know everything.
Yeah.
And the reality is that that's just not possible.
No.
And so an easier way is for us to take what's called a not knowing stance, right? Really come in with humility and to say, hey, this thing is not something I'm familiar with.
Yeah.
But I'm actually here to listen and help you with this, even if I'm not super familiar with this.
Yeah.
So that's what the heart of this exercise is really about.
Okay.
So for this activity, the two skill criteria are calmly, succinctly acknowledge something you don't know / understand.
Okay.
And gently ask for clarification.
Okay.
So
makes sense. Okay, Alexandra, can you be the client again, please?
Sure. I was raised to believe in God and pray, not to go to therapy to whine about my problems.
Well, hold on. I wouldn't say whine. I mean, in therapy, we want to respect your problems. We want to give you space to have, painful feelings, and like we shouldn't like judge you or call you a whiner.
Look, Tony, first off, what you just did, I think it's totally appropriate in some situations, right? You do want to redirect for what is the expectation for counseling. That's not this skill criteria, though. So I want to validate the fact that you might want to do something like that with certain clients, but for this skill, let's really stick to the skill criteria.
Got it.
Okay.
Okay.
And go ahead.
I think it's just a little active. I get a little activated when people describe themselves as whining. You know what I mean? Like, I just hate it when I hear that in therapy.
Yeah. Look, why don't we do this? At the end of today's session, if you like really still feel like you need training on that, we can totally set up a training session for that. For this activity, why don't we stick to these skill criteria? Okay.
All right, I'm on board.
Alexandre, why don't you read that client statement again?
I was raised to believe in God and pray, not to go to therapy to whine about my problems.
Client, I guess I don't really, it occurs to me that we haven't really talked about your religious beliefs. And I'm curious, maybe you could tell me about that.
Okay. So look, you got skill criteria 1 and 2. You asked something that you don't know. You haven't talked about their religious beliefs. And you also gently asked for clarification. I'm actually going to ask you to run this one again. Right? I think for this one, the calmly and succinctly, the doing it gently is so important. Sometimes it helps just to have more reps, even like on the one.
I did feel uncomfortable doing it.
Yeah.
Like it's, I think I didn't realize that I get uncomfortable with this topic area.
Right.
Because, my parents were deeply religious,
Mm-hmm.
and they didn't want me to become a therapist because, for religious reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe can I tell you about that for a little bit before we proceed?
Look, I have two quick thoughts, okay? One, if we need to talk about this, we can totally set a meeting to talk about this. I really want to protect our practice time, though. And actually, I think the best way for you to help clients who have this sort of similar problem, because I think that you really want to help these people, is to get better at practicing these skills.
Okay. I'm on board.
Yeah. All right, can you read us the prompt again here?
Yeah, and let's pause. I just want to highlight, it's probably pretty obvious, but I want to highlight what Jordan just did, which is I am role-playing a client, a student who is getting activated by this material. And this is, fairly common. But as you work your way through the book, everyone will be activated by at least one thing. Like everyone gets a prize. And that's, totally normal. What Jordan is doing here is kind of creating boundaries or a structure so the training doesn't turn into therapy. That protects me, the student. He clarified that the best way, he's anchoring in my desire to help the client, which is why I'm here. And he's clarifying that my best chance of succeeding at helping the client will be by following the skill criteria and rehearsing.
Yeah.
Right. Now he's respecting my, the issues that are being stirred up for me. He's not being judgmental. He's not being harsh. He's just saying that's for a different time and place.
Yeah.
Right. And so we found this is really important. And, this is something for supervisors, trainers to watch out for, because it'll pop up and to just kind of be prepared, especially with the contents of this book.
I think there's something else, Tony.
Yeah.
That I have found to be a big issue, and this is not the field at large, but I think it does happen.
Yeah.
It is also my intent to be very overt. I think sometimes we redirect people and we think that they don't know what's happening. I think it's actually disrespectful. So I'm not going to say, so I give you a rationale for why we're not going to do that.
Right.
Make it explicit. I make it explicit. I'm not just trying to, finesse you back into the activity. No, make it explicit. This is a person.
Yeah. Everything's explicit. Yeah. One of the principles of deliberate practice is everything's explicit. There's no magic. There's no secrets behind the curtain. Everything's fully explicit. Yeah. The whole book is meant to be read by both the student and the teacher. All the materials we produce are open source. Everything's explicit. The more everyone understands, the better.
100%.
So we actually have to wrap up in just a minute here. So thank you, Alexandre, for volunteering. And I'm glad we got into today not just the contents of these exercises, but also some tips and principles about deliberate practice in general. Alexandre, something you said I want to highlight, which is that you're thinking of creating your own exercises for your specific audience, right? Your trainees.
Yeah.
And you've noticed that we follow a very tight format across the books. And this is a format that we've developed after hundreds of tests with test sites around the world. And we really it makes me very happy to hear that you're going to be doing that. And we really would love people around the world to do this, to copy this format, to use the format, but then fill in your own exercises and develop your own skill criteria and your own prompts. And if you do that, if you want our feedback, please feel free to email us drafts, and we're happy to, send you our comments. And now I'm not super familiar, with your work setting and, that kind of thing. So you got to take my feedback with a grain of salt, but we're very happy to support that.
You will so hear about me.
Right.
This is a fantastic gift. I'm glad just for that. I'm glad I attended.
Wonderful. Yeah. I mean, this makes us super happy, and our goal is to kind of spread this and for for trainers like yourself around the world to kind of take it, integrate it, own it, you know, as your process, and then see what you can do with it. So
Lovely.
that's great. Wonderful. Well, thank you, Jordan, for joining us today as our guest expert. Thank you. You gave some really, you know, I was throwing some curveballs at you as I was trying to make it hard.
Yeah.
And you hit them all out of the park. So
that's the deliberate practice of supervision that paid off. That's what that is.
So something I want to emphasize is, you know, Jordan has a lot of experience doing deliberate practice with trainees, and so he was able to hit all my curveballs. You know, your first few times doing this with trainees, it might feel a little messier. So just kind of be prepared for that. But yeah, thank you for joining us today, and we hope you can join us for future webinars, and please stay in touch if you want us to look at any materials, you have questions or anything like that.